On Wednesday, an Iranian nuclear facility was hit in a mysterious attack, with limited details slowly emerging that the site was a nuclear centrifuge facility in Iran's Atomic Energy Organization. And the New York Times reporting that the site was on a list of potential targets given to the Trump administration by Israel. The attack happening on the backdrop of negotiations for the nuclear deal with Iran. So joining us via Zoom to discuss is Micky Aharonson, international relations expert and former head of the Foreign Relations Directorate with the Israeli Prime Minister's National Security Council. Welcome. So first of all, what can you tell us about this attack? Right, we have limited information, but do we know how much damage was done or who was behind it?
No, there are still speculations. Nobody claimed responsibility. These attacks have been ongoing, as we know, and reasserting to the Iranians their vulnerability in some areas. I would say I don't think there's need to explain more. I'm sure in the coming days we will receive more details about this attack.
Now, all of this is happening on the backdrop of negotiations. So how does an attack like this, or you mentioned a series of attacks, how does this affect the negotiations, if at all? And what message is it supposed to convey to the Iranians? You mentioned to show their vulnerability.
Yes, well, it does convey them a message of vulnerability, and maybe makes them want to be more interested in promoting the negotiations. So far, they have been playing quite hard to get. They're not willing to negotiate with the Americans in the same room. They need a third party to mediate between them, and they have been very tough negotiators. They are extremely good negotiators, and I think these attacks are definitely an encouragement for them to sign the deal.
Now, we are hearing conflicting reports in the media surrounding the negotiations. So first of all, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. What is the status of negotiations at the moment?
Well, the Iranians just published today that the Americans agreed to remove all sanctions on their oil, on their insurance, I think, if not all, some of the insurance sector and others, and to remove some personalities from the sanctions list. The Americans did not confirm this, but we can assume to a large extent this is true because we see the Iranians preparing to restart their dealings in the oil market. And we see negotiations in OPEC preparing for the Iranians to come back to the market with all the effect that would have on countries like Saudi Arabia. So I would assume that the deal is progressing. Unfortunately, it was made clear to the Iranians that the interest in having them back on board is no less and maybe more than their need to be back on board. So I think we should assume and make our plans based on the assumption that JCPOA is back in the game.
But yet, on the other hand, we are hearing a report that the U.S. is halting negotiations to hear out the Israeli side, right? Yair Lapid is set to visit next week. There seems to be increased talk between the new administration and Jerusalem in Washington. So what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's extremely, extremely important. I don't know how much to stress that Israel would not remain the only factor in the Middle East that would interfere with American interests. And the American interest today is quiet. They are strategically very tired. They would like to withdraw from the Middle East as much as possible. Unfortunately, the Middle East does not let you leave. And we hear in the news that Saudi Arabia is negotiating with Iran through Iraq. And we know the U.S. would like to concentrate on other issues like China, like Russia, like post-COVID situation, infrastructure, internal issues. And they would really, I think the Americans would really like to have the Iranian nuclear issue off the table and to be done with it. So it is extremely important that Israeli Kochavi and Rivlin and Lapid would speak to the U.S. It's extremely important to have open discussion channels and to coordinate our plans. Our relations with the U.S. are so superior to almost anything else We cannot afford to be a party that objects to their policy, but we can try and we should try to influence it.
All right, Micky Aharonson, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.